Hello, everyone. It's kind of a lazy Sunday afternoon. And so, like anybody, I was just running through things that happened 5 years ago in my head, imagining if they had happened differently. And a friend came to mind, and it was weird. I got it stuck in my head, and I went back on Facebook. There was a friend I had made in rehab, the last rehab that I was in 2012. And his name was, I called him Will. Everyone else called him Willy. Um, it just seems weird to call someone Willy, but I'll refer to him as Willy during the course of this. Um, and it's been 3 years since he passed away. So um, I thought I'd talk just briefly about how I encountered him in my life, and then how we left things, and then of course he ultimately passed away. But it was interesting. So friends in rehab can come and go like this. You kind of feel like you might be best friends forever. It's like when, I don't know. I've never went to camp as a kid, but I imagine it could be like that. Where it's like we're gonna stay together, and then we're all gonna get a house after this, and then everyone leaves, and there's people. Some do well and some don't. Uh, I was court ordered to go to that rehab. And I remember it was like a 2 hour drive. They picked me up right from the jail in Northeast PA and drove me down. It was in Southeast PA. So I was close to Philadelphia. And we couldn't stop. I couldn't get out of the car. Otherwise, they'd have to like cuff me and take me to a rest stop. It was like too much hassle. So waited till I got to the rehab, and they booked me in, gave me a tray. I did a mountain of paperwork, and they took me to the unit that I would be staying on. And they told me I was 3C DD. 3C was the code for 90-day stay, 45 to 90-day stay. So which I knew. I knew I was going to be there for the full 90 probably. And DD was dual diagnosis or co-occurrings, people who are a little bit country and a little bit rock and roll. So one of the techs comes over from the main building and walks me to my unit, which looks like this rehab was a great place. It served a population that otherwise would not get it. They took Medicaid, they took Medicare. You wouldn't get told to leave. You could do a walk-in. They could do the assessment, apply you for benefits, take you same day. There aren't a lot of other treatment centers that I'd been to, and I'd been to a few, that would do that. So, but for a place like that, a lot of folks wouldn't get the kind of help they need. That said, it was not the Ritz-Carlton. My housing unit looked like a broke-down Hojo. But the tech brought me up. I was on a long unit that was all men, about 40 of us. And the first person we walk by, he's trying to be friendly and introduce me to everybody. How those folks are always like a little too happy considering you just destroyed your life, and now you're walking in and you're like, maybe still drunk or high if you didn't go to detox. And he's like, "Oh, this is Will." And I look over and I see this guy. He's shorter than me, and he's got like scraggly black hair down to here, brown, with gray in it. Kind of caveman-esque, sort of. And he goes, "Hey." And he keeps walking. Doesn't stop, just keeps walking. Um, so I thought, okay. And I glanced behind me as he's walking the other way. Um, and sidebar, I don't like to make wide sweeping assumptions about people or stereotype, but I do. Sometimes that happens, and here's one. I have never once in my life met a white person with dreadlocks that I liked. Not one. There's something, ugh, but that aside, he's got three coming down the back. It looks like they were starting to grow out because he wasn't meant to have them, and he, chopped them off. So a few days in rehab, I'm isolated. I haven't shaved. I've showered just to get the jail smell off of me, and I'm still finding my way. I'm still eating, with people I know who are in my unit, but everyone has their own friends. Rehabs have a cycle kind of like that. And I'm a cigarette smoker. Almost in rehab, almost everybody is. There's maybe two people for every 100 that don't. And we're sitting outside, and, I'm kind of quick and can be funny depending on your sense of humor. And I like to think I'm pretty smart. I think most people do, though, and it can't be all of us. But I had heard Willy talk in groups before. Willy was in my small group. We had small group therapy, like the 10 guys, and we would meet 4 times a week for about an hour and a half. And he was funny as hell, but he was also scary to me. He would sit Indian style, arms folded, staring out the window, and mentioned a few times about how much medication he was on. And that concerned me because I thought, God, if he goes off, I mean, I can just imagine blood and hair, flying everywhere. But he was also very quick. He was very funny, I thought. Um, and so we started chit chatting. We started having lunch together every day. It would be just the two of us. We had another friend who his name was Troy. Troy also passed away. It's funny. We used to sit around kind of joking dark humor out loud. It was like, which one of us do you think will die first? Who will be the last one left? It's fucked up because it's me. I was the one who lived. But um so we would eat together, we would chat together, and have these long conversations. It was like the elder council, the other patients used to call us. Um, we had Willie was extremely well read. He had spent a lot of time in state prison, starting when he was 18. He from 18 to 21, he did 3 years. Then he was in and out, in and out. His drugs of choice were heroin and alcohol. Um, and he didn't complain. He had a lot of physical symptoms and he had a lot of mental health symptoms. He would hallucinate. He would hear things. Um, and he really did his best to keep it in check. He wasn't in denial about any of the stuff that was going on with him. And oh God. He would just sit there and he would just be like, "Oh, I'm seeing stuff now." And very matter of factly. And I wasn't so matter of fact about this stuff at the time. So it was curious. He had a lot of other problems that again he kind of pretty much kept to himself. He walked like a ballerina, like with his feet out like this. It was funny to see like long hair with the flopping going like that. And he wasn't a terribly tall guy. He was probably 5'7", maybe 5'8". He had had degeneration in both of his hips because of a couple of years, I guess, of malnourishment. He was drinking probably, and I believe him, like a half gallon of vodka a day. Um, and they were just falling apart. So he would lose his balance. He would tip this way and that way. Years of alcohol withdrawal. He now had a seizure disorder, so he was on Dilantin, I think, maybe another drug, to keep that stuff in check. So he bought and earned all his health problems from addiction, pretty much. It sucks. And he was finally willing to get well. He'd been, of course, like to 20 rehabs like the rest of us. So there was that end of things. We had a lot of, addiction stuff in common. Even if your addiction is different, the thinking is the same a lot of the times. The feelings are the same, even if the details are different. So you can connect kind of in that way. And he was the first person I did that with in a long time. Aside from the fact that he had some of the funniest stories ever, because Willie was a carny. Carnies have the best stories. If you ever have the chance to meet someone who is a carny, pull up your chair, settle in, because it's funny stuff. It's wild stuff. I had never heard such things in my entire life, and it was the way he told the stories, obviously too. So, um, so as rehab winded down, I left and he was going to stay there. His insurance pretty much said, "This is the last time we're paying for you to go to rehab. You've been there 20 times. So we'll pay through the end, through extended care and everything like that, but that's your last shot. That's it." So I left after 90 days. He walked me down to the van. I was very emotional. The day before my last day, just to backtrack one day, sorry, we were in our small group, and for some reason, I think we always ended small group with gratitude, something we were thankful for. That's 12-steppy, but it's also religious-y, and never a bad time to just acknowledge gratitude. It's a good thing. Can't really hurt you too much. So, I don't know, I said some generic thing about time spent here or whatever. And Willie had said, "I'm grateful I met a friend named Steve." I was appalled. I was like clutching my pearls. Kept it to myself in my face. I got outside and I said, "Will, that was really nice." And we're sitting on a bench waiting to go to lunch because you can't show up at the cafeteria early. So as we're sitting there, I'm beginning to cry, like, a lot. And I trust him at this point. I don't think he's gonna, it was no big secret that I was gay. He just didn't care. Um, he defended me one time actually, and against there was a holy roller who came through, and Jesus was his salvation as far as his addiction, and if whatever works. He was arrested a year later, but life happens. And he said he was against, the holy roller said that he was against gay marriage, and Willy was like, yeah, you got a lot of gay guys banging down your door trying to marry you. And I was like, so he was a good ally. Willy got to pick the movie one Saturday, and he picked the Birdcage just to piss people off, I think. So he was cool. So I left, and he was friends, and we wrote back and forth. He stayed in treatment for like 6, 7 more months. Then he moved into like a halfway house for people with mental health and dual things. He was going to 12-step meetings. I was too at the time, and double trouble meetings for people who have mental health and drug and alcohol. And he was okay for a while, and he was working a little bit, but I think he started to drift, and the calls were back and forth. We would talk on Messenger sometimes, we would text, but um, he was just going into that. He was pulling away, I think. The last I heard from him, he was going to go back on the road, even though the carnival lifestyle, from what he explained, is deadly. It's a hard party lifestyle anyway, but he needed to work. And so we met in like summer of 2012, and he passed away in the summer of 2015. So about 3 years I had of his friendship, long distance and inpatient. And he was a good guy. I miss him. I think about him a lot. He was taken too soon. The details are murky around what happened. Died suddenly at home. Not too many people in their late 20s or early 30s die suddenly at home. In the region where I live, that means suicide, overdose, or accident with an all-terrain vehicle, usually. So I don't know. I don't know if he overdosed or if he actually took his life. It was hard to tell, or if he took his life by overdosing. But from what I understand, from reading, following up on social media and messages from his mother and stuff like that, it wasn't natural causes. So that's Willy. He was my first friend in a while, the first person who was happy to see me in a very long time, the first person who would talk to me without me having to pay a copay. So of course there was my family. I mean, they were around and they were great that whole time that I was ill, but he was the first person who probably didn't feel obligated to give me any of their time and attention, and he did. So I'm glad I got to kind of remember him with this, because he deserves it. He had a hard life, and I imagine he had people he hurt. Addiction, you step all over people. But part of the companionship I had with him helped me get well in that time and place in that treatment center just as much as anything else that I've learned there too. There's something very healing about connecting with other people. And I'm glad I put reservations aside about white people with dreadlocks, and followed up with just following the banter we had, the connections that we had, and just put aside my prejudices and let a friendship develop. And rest in peace, Willy, wherever you are. I hope he's somewhere. Even if I'm kind of an agnostic. I don't weigh in on a lot of that kind of stuff. But as far as I'm concerned, his life mattered. So thanks for tuning in. And I will catch up with y'all soon. Bye.